Hi, this is Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, your host for The Voice of Leadership, the show for business executives and global corporations who appreciate a biblical perspective on life and leadership. You are listening to our Fab 500 series featuring some of the best of our 500 episodes and celebrating the 30th year of TRANSLEADERSHIP Inc.
Hey, this is Mike Mooney. Dr. Karen and I are going to be talking about the differences between champions and challengers. We're going to be talking about what does DNA really stand for, and then the power of these four words: intentional action drives clarity. You're going to want to hear more, so tune in.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to work at NASCAR or what happens behind the scenes in race car organizations? Today, you are in for a special treat as my guest knows all about those high-speed organizations and the lessons that are important for all of us to consider. So this is a part one of a two-part series or episode. So be sure to also look out for our upcoming second interview. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. It would be easy to say that Mike Mooney's career has been going in circles for more than 25 years in the high-speed world of professional motorsports. An award-winning executive, Mike built and protected the reputations for global brands such as Mercedes-Benz, 3M, NASCAR, Sunoco, Tylenol, Walmart, Sprint, Kellogg, and Eli Lilly. Having worked with championship drivers and teams for decades, Mike saw the power and results of continuous improvement, mindset, and peak performance. His breakthrough book, Reputation Shift: Lessons from Pit Road to the Boardroom, is a toolbox with ready-to-use personal branding strategies for people who want to create greater personal and professional opportunities in their lives. Welcome, Mike, to the Voice of Leadership and Dr. Karen Speaks Leadership. I'm glad to have you here with me today.
Dr. Karen, it is an absolute pleasure to be with you. I'm so excited about our time together today in this conversation. It's going to be great.
Yes, looking forward to it. And you have such an exciting and an illustrative sort of career in terms of the executive roles that you've had in the past. Now, I want to unpack some of those. I know that many people might be listening because they knew, but we're going to be talking about NASCAR today as one of the companies that you actually worked with. So, what role did you have with NASCAR? When people think of the organization, they think about the drivers, they think about the racetrack and racing around. They don't always know about the behind the scenes executive engine that makes the whole operation work. So what was your role? How did you add value? How did you make a difference?
So that is a great question to ask, because you're right. So many people think of when they see the sport, professional sports in general, quite honestly, that they look at the product, on the racetrack or in the arena on the field and think that's what it is. However, there is an entire, what we would call an ecosystem that is supporting the sport, right? So within NASCAR, there are agencies and there are corporate brands and there are the race teams, there's the media outlets and those channels, right? I mean, there's so many different places for people to be involved in the sport. So in my world, I was able to work with NASCAR and other sanctioning bodies like in IndyCar and Formula One, in roles in the agency side, on the corporate sponsor, on the brand side, as well as the race team property side. So I got to see the sport from many different perspectives, which did add value to each of those different groups, quite honestly. So my world was really about when a brand like Mercedes or Eli Lilly or 3M was looking to sponsor or get involved in the sport, to either, launch a product or what have you. It was my role to help them build a strategy around the sponsorship to bring that brand to life in a way that would be credible and authentic and relevant to the consumer and help them drive either return on investment, more business, loyalty, differentiation, whatever that goal might have been.
Okay, so when we think about NASCAR, for example, as an organization, and
Mhm.
you're adding value by connecting them to these corporate sponsors and so on. So if you weren't there, what would be missing for them? What wouldn't they have if you weren't working with them?
Well, another interesting perspective because when people look at racing in general and you look at the race cars and they think about the fuel that it takes to get those cars on the track, oftentimes people think about, well, Sunoco fuel, right? It's about get the fuel in the car. The reality is that there's another type of fuel that is needed in the sport, and that's financial fuel. That's the sponsorships. So that was the work that I did. If I hadn't been in those roles, and there were many other people who do similar types of work, then those brands, those corporate brands, aren't going to see the return they're looking for, right? They're not going to be investing in the sport, which then allows the teams to go out and do what it is that they do week in, week out. You see, NASCAR is very different than any other professional sport. You see, other professional sports, if you look, I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, so I'll take the Hornets or the Panthers, for example, right? They don't have a lot of corporate sponsors because they have a stadium and they can generate revenue through, tickets and concessions and all these different things. The race teams don't. So they rely on sponsors. That's their lifeblood. That's why the role I had and worked on through my career was a vital piece in that team.
Well, Mike, I think that most business people can certainly understand that finances are the fuel to the business in a large way. Without
Yeah.
that, you're out of business. You're not going anywhere, so to speak. You're not going to be able to race around anybody's track. So, like you said earlier, Mike, I know you worked for NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, Roush Fenway Racing, and so on. What's the difference between all of these racing organizations? What's the same? What's different about them? And what's the same or different about leading in any other industry? You mentioned the difference with other sports, meaning that the sponsorship is so important. So tell us a little bit about other differences.
The differences that we found in our sport aren't really too dissimilar to what corporate leaders experience in regular business. I'll show you why and what I mean by that is, when I worked for Roush Fenway Racing, we had a product. And our product was the race team on the track every week. And we were graded by our performance every week, just as corporate leaders are based on how their products are doing in the marketplace. And it was, a challenge though, because there are certain things that are out of your control when it relates to things that are happening in the race. You may be leading the race and a tire blows out. You may be in contention to win and you get hit by somebody else and suddenly you're knocked out of the race. There's so many little variables that pop up. We find ourselves in these places where we're having to make pivots and shifts with our competition, just as corporate executives may do with their marketing or their advertising or their retail strategies on a weekly basis, right? So it's not too different. The only difference is that, our work was done on Sundays and Saturdays, at racetracks around the country. It was long hours on the weekends versus being home with our families.
That's a huge sacrifice right there for sure. Being
Yeah.
able to work at these different times that are necessary because of the business that you were in.
Yeah.
So I know that you were working too with some of the brands that I would consider significant luxury brands, such as Mercedes-Benz, for example. So let's talk about a luxury brand. What's different about a luxury brand? What do they have to do to keep up with excellence and quality in the view of the consumer? And how is that maybe a little different from just your everyday brand?
I love that. There is a difference between being on top and being a challenger. And that's just in your mindset. When you're on top, like a Mercedes-Benz, you are constantly on that tightrope of doing more than what's expected, thinking further down the line, like really focusing on how do we stay and continue to grow and maintain what it's taken decades to build in terms of a brand and reputation and the consumer perception and all of those different aspects. So for Mercedes, when I was doing work with them in IndyCar, it was really about how do we use motorsports as a way to tell a story of competition and youthfulness. And that was important to the brand at the time, was really kind of tap into the fact that what they did on the racetrack translated over to what people experienced in their consumer car. There's a technology transfer. Now, on the flip side, if you're a challenger brand, you're scrappy, you're hungry, you're doing everything that you can do just to find an edge to get just a little bit closer to that leader that's in front of you. And that actually gives you more opportunity to take some chances. Whereas a Mercedes was very risk averse, right? They would rather miss 10 opportunities and mess one up because it could hurt their reputation and brand. The challengers are like, forget it, we'll do whatever we can do and we'll roll the dice. Let's see what we can make happen. So really it was about the mindset and the approach and the attitude that the executives had.
That's really a great characterization. I like the difference in how you describe it. It's kind of challenging in a sense to stay on top. It takes a lot of foresight, a lot of proactive action. And like you said, one of the risk factors is to become risk averse, which in a sense is the opposite too of what you want to do in order to revitalize your brand. Whereas when you're the challenger, you can go all kinds of different directions and you're not maybe messing up as much history or whatever as the luxury brand might. I used to live in Germany. And so when I lived there were so many cars. Mercedes-Benz was, the Mercedes was the car to have high performance. And particularly in Germany on the Autobahn, you could drive really fast and they drove fast very well. Well-made cars that would last forever. My husband was a Mercedes man for years and years and years. He would get one Mercedes, get the next, and so on and so forth, because of that commitment, I would say, to a car that was going to last and was going to be well-made. So I have a question for you. When Mercedes-Benz decided to move a lot of their operation over to the United States, maybe not be in Germany where there's this sense of precision and excellence in how things are done in the society in general, not just at Mercedes-Benz, culture and background. And we know we think about the German culture for precision, for speed, for excellence, well-made vehicles that last. The United States is kind of more of a throwaway society in a sense. When Mercedes-Benz moved a lot to the US, what did they encounter? What were some of the challenges or difficulties? What shifted for them from your perspective?
Culture is the biggest part of that. It is culture, and it's a respect for the heritage, without a doubt. And that is something that is instilled within Mercedes-Benz, whether it was in Mercedes-Benz USA or it was back in Germany. So the culture was bridged in a couple different ways. There were many American executives that were working in Germany, so they were immersed in that culture and understood the heritage, the focus on brand and quality and what was expected, where the expectations were. And on the flip side, here in the US, there were many German executives that came over and were in the offices here and working right along their American counterparts. And I wouldn't say, there to ensure that the culture and all continued, but, their presence meant a lot. Their presence meant a lot. And for the executives that I worked with, it was a very different culture. When they would refer to the race director as the race boss. We don't use that word here that often in American business culture of your title is the racing boss. It was literally on the business card, boss. It's interesting, this little nuances like that, but it was definitely something that in the US side that the American executives held very close to their heart and wanted to make sure that they were maintaining at every step.
Actually, I love that term you use, a culture bridge. and
Mhm.
thinking about the exchange that goes across the pond, so to speak, that the American executives would go to Germany, the German executives would come here, and you have an exchange of that culture so that you're recreating it to some large extent as well, so that it lives on and doesn't necessarily have to physically be in the country of Germany to have some of the same qualities, is what I'm hearing you say. So that's intentional. That's very
Very.
intentional work to make sure that that culture bridge and that transfer actually happens, that it
Yeah.
actually occurs.
Yeah, and finding the right people. You know, not everyone's going to be the right fit when it comes down to getting the work done. And the work in there was also focused on maintaining the culture. And it's okay. That was one of the lessons we learned, is that it's okay. Not everyone is going to be here. Maybe there was another place, but it was so focused on that was a big determining factor for a lot of people's work.
I love that. So it's culture and also who's on the bus,
Right.
and some people don't need to be on that Mercedes bus.
Yeah.
So
There are a lot of buses out there,
a
Dr.
lot
Karen.
of
A lot of
buses out
buses.
there, right?
It's okay.
Exactly. You could go to a different company.
Right.
So let me shift gears a little bit and talk about a brand such as Tylenol. We know
Mm.
that some years ago, Tylenol went through the Tylenol scare. We've talked a lot about that on the Voice of Leadership in the past. And when they went through this and some Tylenol was tainted and some people were harmed and died and so on, and nobody knows completely the backstory and everything that happened. But
Right.
what I do remember at that time was that Tylenol, they took some bold steps and actions. They removed all the product from the shelves. They replaced products to consumers in their homes who had purchased Tylenol. They got on the news. They gave updates. They told the truth about situations. And all of this, I'm sure, makes a difference in terms of how we perceive the brand today. Even though they had that crisis, we don't see them as a disaster company or anything like that. So I know your specialty is branding. So talk to us a little bit, not only Tylenol, yes, and maybe there's some other companies that had crises. What did you do? How do you come alongside them? What else are those really premier brands doing that maybe others don't do? What's the contrast? What's the difference?
Yeah, can I take a step back on the
Yes.
first part of that, because what you opened with the Tylenol scare that occurred with the product tampering is something that is actually should be celebrated more. And I know that there are case studies written on this for various executive business schools, but having the opportunity to have worked alongside them and guided them in their motorsports programs. One of the great honors I've had throughout my career is being able to work alongside and inside with many of these amazing brands and getting to know the people and, more importantly, the culture and the heritage. So what James Burke did when he was the CEO at the time when that happened, that company was losing market share overnight, as you can imagine. And it really was a moment that was going to either make or break that company, that American institution. And I often use this story of what James Burke did when I'm working with clients now, and I ask them, what's your Tylenol moment, or is this your Tylenol moment? Because what James did was he took a situation and absolutely flipped an industry on its side. So not only did they do the right thing in the market by removing products, they were communicating tirelessly, being transparent with everything they knew on a timely basis, keeping timelines. But he also had a team of engineers working overtime to figure out how can we recreate a bottle, right? How can we be part of a solution that will help an industry, not just ourselves? How can we, for this moment, be bigger than ourselves, although the spotlight is shining on us? And that's what they did. When they created that tamper-proof bottle, it became the industry standard, and it saved that organization. So, when you ask about how I've helped organizations through crisis. And a lot of the crisis work that I've done has been dealing with driver deaths, may have been fan injuries, it could be sponsor bankruptcies, it could be drivers being knuckleheads on national TV and saying things that you're like, oh my gosh, how and why did you just say that, right? And picking up pieces after the fact. But a lot of the things that James Burke did in that situation hold true. And I've been a student of his and what they did. And the key thing and all that, Dr. Karen, first and foremost, is communication, transparency, right? And ownership. Ownership. How often do you see somebody get on the TV and they acknowledge what's happened, but they don't own the actions themselves, right? They don't own the actions. They'll just say, this is what happened and we're going to get better. You know, that's just half of the equation. You really have to own it, acknowledge that, and then tell people these are the steps we're going to take to make sure this doesn't happen again. These are the checks and balances we're going to put into play moving forward. This is how we're going to use this as our Tylenol moment to be better, to get better for ourselves, our key stakeholders, our consumers. Now, you just pulled me right back into my crisis mode voice in there, you know, but those are really the steps that you have to take.
Actually, I love that part about the ownership because it's taking ownership that engenders a sense of trust in the people who are listening.
Yes.
And you can say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. If you never take ownership, you miss that trust opportunity. So I think that's really huge what you just said. I also like something else you said. The CEO did a whole bunch of brilliant things as far as communication and so on along the way. However, thinking more broadly, not just about themselves, not just getting insular, but thinking about how can we make the industry better, getting outside of himself, having a broader view. And I think when you take that broader view, there's more room for innovation, more room to come up with solutions that you otherwise might not come up with. When you get insular, you kind of get tunnel vision, and it's harder to think of a broader way to operate. So when they came out with the tamper-proof bottles, it didn't just help them, like you said, it helped the whole industry to be better and to be
Right.
safer. And they saw this, in other words, they leveraged the crisis for an opportunity that was beneficial.
1000%. I often say, and I truly believe this, that opportunity is often disguised as adversity. And it just takes someone or a team of people to look through it and past it to figure out, okay, where is the opportunity in here? And I want to be super clear because there's opportunity and there's opportunistic, right? And in business, we often see people trying to become opportunistic in times of opportunity. I'm speaking specifically to the idea of an opportunity to take an industry to the next level. Now, what would have been super cool and amazing, how cool would this have been in the media, but just in general? Well, what if Bayer came over at that time and said, hey, we want to help you. We want to help you with the R&D for this new bottle, because you know what? That could have happened to us. It could have as easily been us as it was you. What can we do as leaders in an industry to come together, right? How
Yeah,
cool
I
would that
love
have
that
been,
because that's partnership right there.
right?
And like you said, it could have been us. And so, yeah, that bringing all of the resources to bear on an issue that affects everyone in the industry for sure. That's a great picture. That's a great example. And I actually love it. And I'm so glad you pointed out the difference between opportunity and opportunistic. We're so used to organizations being opportunistic, and that is not the same thing at all. And
No.
so that's a good distinction, certainly to make. You also said, Mike, you said that, sometimes going back to sort of like the race car world, that sometimes maybe a driver might get out there on the news and say something crazy or whatever that's not helpful. We know about the Tylenol thing because that was out in the news, very public. Stories have been written about it for years. What's an example of the kind of thing that could happen? Let's say a driver does say something crazy in the news. How does that get leveraged for an opportunity that could somehow, some good could come out of it?
Yeah, I'll share with you a story, Dr. Karen, that it didn't necessarily turn out so well for that driver. It did turn out very well for a driver by the name of Jimmy Johnson, who, if you follow the sport, had a sponsor by the name of Lowe's Home Improvement, one of the longest running sponsorships in the sport's history. They won 7 championships together. But that may not have happened had it not been for a driver who was previously driving for Lowe's, and they were a client of ours at an agency. And there was a couple of incidents, Dr. Karen, where, he got out of the race car after an accident. And one of the things about motorsports that people love is the emotion that the drivers have, right? That they show on TV. It's just a grit and anger. They might be trying to like grab and fight the other driver. You don't really see that in other professional sports where the quarterback goes to the sideline after being intercepted and the camera's not in their face going, what happened? But in NASCAR, you have it. So in this case, this driver got in an accident. TV camera went up to him and said, hey, what was going on out there? And he said, I don't know. Nobody would draft with me. It's like I had AIDS or something. Oh, okay. Now, bear in mind that this driver has their sponsors' logos all over them, has Lowe's on there. Well, the following weekend, we talked to the driver and say, hey, you really can't say that at all. It's not appropriate. Let's work on this. Little spokesperson training. A couple weeks later, similar thing, gets into an accident, gets out of the car. He's angry. Camera gets in his face. And they say, what happened? He goes, I don't know. They're driving around like a bunch of, and he used the R word in there. And little did he didn't know, but at the time, Lowe's was the largest corporate sponsor of the Special Olympics. And literally within a couple of weeks, he was gone. They said, we can't have this. We can't have him representing our brand. I mean, that's how delicate and intricate and quick things can change based on what people say, impacting reputation. So anyhow, they got rid of that driver, and shortly thereafter, they found this young unknown by the name of Jimmy Johnson, who went on to greatness within the sport.
Well, I think this is a cautionary tale. It just lets us know that we have to be brand representative at all times. That
Yes,
you're not ever off duty, so to speak. You're always speaking for your brand, no matter where you are, what you say, and and people are listening and they're connecting the dots. And so if
they are.
who you're representing doesn't like what you're saying, or the dots get connected in a way that's problematic, wow, you lose opportunity then. You
Well,
lose opportunity.
you lose opportunity. You can lose your job these days. I mean, there's so many things that can go sideways so quickly, especially in today's world where we are, it's unlike any other time, Dr. Karen. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. The world we're in has never been as connected and hyper connected as we are today. And I'm a big believer when I speak with different executives and such, that it's not the company that builds the reputation. The reputation is built on the shoulders of every single person who represents that company. So to your point, is that you're not just representing your brand, you're representing the brand for which you work.
Absolutely. Which really, hopefully, you think of as your brand too, because you're part of it, in
Exactly.
that sense. Otherwise, maybe you might not want to be there, want to
Yeah.
be with a brand that you can represent or that you do believe in on some level. So, no, that's a great story. That was very helpful just to sort of unpack it, break it down into something visible we could all see and pay attention to. So, thank you for sharing that
Sure.
picture.
Oh, can I just add the PS to that? So
Sure.
about 4 years ago, I was in Daytona. Now, this all happened back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. I was in Daytona Beach, Florida, about 4 years ago on some business, and I was down by NASCAR's headquarters. And I was at a local sandwich shop, and I was eating outside between meetings, and up walks that driver. And I'm like, hey, man, I started talking to him, and we were catching up. And I said, you know, you remember that? And he's like, I do. I remember that. And he goes, I didn't really have much of a filter. And I said, but that really isn't an excuse, right? And he goes, I know it's not. But it was interesting. To this day, he still thinks about that.
Oh, I hope he learned something from it. Those are the kind of lessons we want to learn from and move forward in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
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 Yeah. Otherwise, then the experience is wasted if we don't get to learn something from it and to be able to show up differently after the experience.
That's right. That's right.
So we've been talking about crises, like the Tylenol situation, or crises such as drivers saying things on the news. We were talking about luxury brands like Mercedes-Benz. What about the big box stores? People like the Walmarts of the world, Lowe's Home Improvement. What's important to them And what do you do for them that's either the same or different than what you might do, let's say, for the more luxury brands?
Yeah, so we'll take Walmart as an example. Walmart, when we were doing work with them, was very focused, as they still are today, with the EDLP, right? The acronym Everyday Low Pricing, and for them that was vital to their relationship with their customers. And we had to build a program or in racing around this idea of EDLP and customers first. So what that presented us with an opportunity to do with the executives, and they were all for this, is, how could Walmart continue to be a resource, not just during the week for families in the community, but how could they be the place to be ready and get ready for the big race and races over the weekend? So that was a situation where the program that we created really was about events and activities happening at the Walmart stores themselves in race markets. So we had the opportunity to really get the race fans who were looking for their supplies, or the families who lived in the community looking for their chips or their drinks or whatever it might be. And we put together a dynamic program where we brought in other race team sponsors like M&M's, and Hefty, Ballpark, Frank's, like all those brands that are in Walmart but were in racing, and created these very cool activations for families and kids that really brought excitement to the Walmart stores themselves. And they saw that there was, literally the year over year spikes in revenue there at the store in those key categories was undeniable of how it was helping lift the business. No question.
That's a fabulous example. What I love about it is it's really a win-win scenario that you're talking about. So both entities really get a chance to benefit from the partnership. That's ideal. When you can create that, that's really a sweet spot in terms of a sponsorship.
And it was the trifecta, quite honestly. You had Walmart that was happy because it was getting the foot traffic that it desired. You had the consumer that was getting the EDLP and the opportunity to meet their drivers because they would do appearances and sign autographs. And then the sponsor in the sport, like M&M Mars or Hefty or others, were getting the lift at retail that was helping to justify the investment in the sponsorship itself. So it really was, when you talk about an ecosystem I mentioned earlier for the sport, it was helping so many on numerous levels. It was an exciting program to be part of, quite honestly.
Yeah, that really does sound exciting just hearing about it and hearing how you can make a difference by thinking in the ways that you're referring to here today.
Yeah.
So I know that you're also an award-winning executive for all of this work that you were doing with these companies and these organizations. So tell us about some of the awards that you've won, how you got them, and so on.
Oh gosh. I am not comfortable speaking about this kind of stuff, Dr. Karen. You know me.
That's why I'll ask you about
uh,
it and give you a chance to tell us
okay.
about
Okay.
it.
I appreciate that. Oh goodness. So, speaking of Tylenol, the program that I was a part of and had the opportunity to help, lead and lead with other wonderful executives as well. There's never one person who's done everything. We all know that, especially as leaders. But for the racing program that we developed, that was around, you think about Tylenol and its promise about pain relief, and we created a whole program around make pain go fast. Right? Think
Ooh,
about that for racing, and make pain go fast. So the program that we did actually was one of the top three awards for the James Burke award within Johnson and Johnson, which recognized global marketing campaigns, not just within Tylenol, but within Johnson and Johnson as well globally. So we were in the top three, one of the top three for that award, which was very humbling, without a doubt. And then when I was working for Nextel, was running their marketing communications when Nextel took over for Winston as the series sponsor, where it went from the Winston Cup series to the Nextel Cup series. That was an amazing opportunity there. It was a $750 million sponsorship at the time, the largest sponsorship in sports history. And we won a number of different awards, for the work there. But one that I was near and dear to my heart was through the Public Relations Society of America, being a PR guy at heart, recognizing us for one of their highest awards for communication strategy and consumer engagement. So that was just a couple right there. I'm gonna stop there. I hope that's enough.
Well, that gives us a flavor for it. Yes. And,
Yeah.
it just says that people want to celebrate that which is really helping them and that's making a difference and that they wouldn't have thought of on their own. And so it just shows that the work that you were doing with these organizations was so valuable, was so useful, because people don't give awards just for no reason. There has to be a value add that they see. So thank
Right.
you for
Right.
giving us the information about it.
And thank you for making me feel better with that last part about saying all of that. So it's a team of people that worked their tails off and put their hearts and everything into these programs. As a lot of leaders know that to be recognized doesn't just happen, So it was definitely a testament to the team of people I had the chance to work with.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's true. So I want you to think, Mike, for a second. Think about your background. Think about your upbringing. What
Hmm.
would you say that it prepared you for these corporate roles that you've had? What in your backstory brought you to those kinds of jobs and those kinds of impacts?
Oh, that's a good one. It's a good one. So I'm going to take you back to when I was a child, and my dad was a motorhead, and his buddies were all motorheads, and they would be always working on their cars, and they would race, and So I grew up around motorsports. The irony is that I was, as a kid, could never give my dad the right wrench or the right tool that he was looking for. It was just, and I was just that kid. I was not mechanically inclined. So what ended up coming out of that, though, and this gets to the what I really believe helped me and continues to help me, quite honestly, and I really, really believe this, is I learned two key things by not being able to give my dad the right tools. I had to observe and anticipate. I had to observe what he was doing and then anticipate what was coming next, so it would give me time to go find what it is that I needed to find and get him the right, because I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to give him the right tool. But I carried that. I really believe unknowingly, unwittingly, quite honestly, Dr. Karen, into my career of observing and anticipating what's not just happening next, but what is next 2, 3 things. Like, I had a game where I would try to lay out the next 4 tools that my dad was going to need, so I could just be there and just hand it to him, right? And him be like, "How did you know? I've been watching, and I'm thinking ahead." So that, to me, I think is really what's helped me and continues to, quite honestly.
Well, in fact, I mean, thinking back now to your executive life in the corporate world, how
Mhm.
did you use that
Mhm.
ability to great effect?
Yeah, that was without a doubt, when it came to crisis management, public relations, or in marketing, I was always the person in the room that, when the plan was laid out, I was like, "Awesome, I love it." But then what? Or what if? That was one of my big phrases. Well, what if? Have we thought through what could be? So I was always trying to help our team, our leaders, see around that next corner. Because often, if you think about what happens, people are focused, they get a task, they're told to put a plan together, and how are we going to get there? Get us from point A to point B as quickly as we can, most efficiently, effectively, it's going to drive the best return in revenue for us. That's great. And people will do that, and they'll try to follow that straight line. But what are the contingencies? What haven't we thought about? What should we be thinking of? What's happening in the climate around us, in the environment, that maybe we're thinking too insular, right? Is this product going to be tone deaf in the marketplace because of something that's going on? Like, what are those things? So that's where it really helped me stand out as someone who was thinking more through the process, not just the product.
I actually love that because, your clients may not have always been thinking about 2, 3, 10 moves down the line or
Yeah.
being proactive in their thinking, and for you to help them anticipate and consider options and possibilities and some worst case scenarios and other kind of scenario planning. That's very valuable. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. I love that.
Well, I didn't, I'm not, I wasn't the doom and gloom guy, it wasn't
Right.
that. It was just, it was
No,
very much let's kind of look at it from this side. Let's look at it from that side. How would this audience receive this message? Would it be appropriate? Is it going to have them leaning, right? All those different pieces that it was fun for me, and something that I enjoy doing, because it is proactive,
it
and
is.
it does help in many cases get us to a different place, or have some contingencies that if something were to happen, oh, we've thought about it. It's not the what now.
Exactly. It's definitely the opposite of doom and gloom. You have doom and gloom when you haven't thought about what could possibly happen, and now
Right.
you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
However, if you've thought about it in advance, you've planned in advance, and you've considered possibilities, you avoid doom and gloom in
Yeah.
essence, you
Yeah.
know.
Exactly right. Or at least can say, if somebody were to question why how did this happen? Well, you know what? We thought about X, Y, and Z, and this is why we went down this path. Oh, okay,
Exactly.
great. Hadn't thought of that. Thank you. You know?
Exactly. So, Mike, suppose that there's someone in my audience who is an executive. They're an executive in a less well known corporation. We've been talking about well known businesses and entities today. What are a couple of little secret strategies that you might share with the everyday business leader about how that person can think or operate in such a way that they elevate even their brand, which is not a household name yet?
There is power, Dr. Karen, in looking up. We look up to people, right? There are people that in our lives that we'll look up to. That they could be someone, maybe we want to emulate them, or there are things about them that we like. Maybe not everything, but there are things that they've done that we respect and appreciate. And I don't think businesses are that different, quite honestly. That if you're a young brand, we'll just take that for an example. If you're a young challenger brand, there's nothing wrong with looking at a leader in your category, or a leader in the industry that you admire the work they've done, and the brand they've built, the type of process or customer service. Look at those attributes. Look at the things that made them successful. How can you take a couple of those pieces that would work for you in your culture and within your team or leadership? That's one area that I would really encourage leaders and emerging organizations to think through. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you're going to become them, that you're a wannabe. It's recognizing success points, because I really believe that success leaves clues. We just have to take the time to look for them. So that's one thing I would offer up. And I really believe the other part is just, to continue to be inquisitive, right? And continue to be intentional in the work that you're doing. It's often very easy for us to become reactive and on the hamster wheel of just go, 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 checklist, checklist, checklist. Hey, we're busy, we're getting things done. Yeah, but busyness doesn't equal impact. So maybe try to look at the distinction between what's keeping you busy versus what's driving impact for your brand.
I love that. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I'm going to ask you.
More?
So, haven't I been on the spot enough?
I love it. I love
Well,
it.
I'll put you on the spot in this way. So, I
Please.
want you to think about a brand that you've thought about, and what's a brand that you wanted to emulate in some point. And what have you incorporated personally in how you lead and operate today?
Hmm. That is a fantastic question. It's interesting for my work today, because I am the brand, I am the company as a speaker. I look at other speakers, quite honestly, and that ranges from Anthony Robbins to Ed Milet to Gary V to Zig Ziglar. I mean, going across the board. For me, I'm a student of the craft. And I really learned that from racing, that you can focus on going fast all day long, but that's only gonna last for so long. But if you're really a student of the car or of the engine, then you're going to continually find ways to innovate and evolve, which keeps you fresh and relevant, competitive to win. And I feel the same way with speaking in the work that I'm in now. I really am in a phase of I'm confident in my message, and I really want to work on that craft of the delivery, of the art, of watching these other like bigger than life people and how they go about authentically delivering a message that's really hitting people in the heart in a place that's changing lives.
So, what's one thing you've sort of moved over from one of those people you admire?
Hmm. I would say quite honestly, getting comfortable with being myself and using my voice. You know, for years in racing, and maybe some of your viewers and listeners can relate to this. Maybe this resonates for them, is that, you know, in the corporate world, we put armor on every day and we're weighed down by this armor to protect ourselves, to protect, you know, our hearts, our authenticity, and it prevents that from coming through. And, you know, for me to speak with an authentic voice that's mine, that I'm comfortable with, I took that away from all of the people I had mentioned, from Zig Ziglar to Anthony Robbins, Gary Vee, I mean, down to the local levels of speakers. Is the only way that you're going to be impactful is to be authentic and be comfortable with yourself. And that's not just for a speaker, Dr. Karen, you know this to be true, even for leaders. The authenticity, the freedom that brings, right? That's powerful in my opinion, in my heart.
We are actually the most powerful people when we are being who God created us to be. So to speak. I
Yes,
mean, He's
yes.
already got people in some other lanes. For each of us, we have unique giftings, we have a unique combination. And if we show up authentically as all of that, then we can do what God has purposed for us to do in our lives. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. As far
Yeah,
as leadership,
yeah.
yes.
Yes, and that taps into, oh, I love where you just went with that, because there's something that I believe we all have within us, and it's our DNA, and it's not our X and Y chromosomes, right? It's our divine natural abilities, the things that we were designed and created to do that nobody else in this world can do like you can, like I can. And it's when we recognize and embrace that DNA, the things that we do, like it's breathing, that's where the magic happens. You're exactly right. That's where we're living in a space where we were really, again, intentionally built to live in and be and share and oh, okay, I can go on and on with this, but that's it's a special place that I believe I'm seeing more leaders in corporate America being more comfortable stepping into.
And that's a good day when more
I
people are
believe it.
starting to do that. So, yeah, that's a take home point right there. The DNA, your divine natural abilities. I have to say that again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, Mike, how can people get a hold of you? How can they reach you? You know, what's the website or anything else you want to share with the audience about how they can stay in touch or
Well,
get
thank you so much for offering that, Dr. Karen. So being a brand guy, I like to make things very, very simple. Okay. So if your viewers, listeners want to email me, Mike at MikeMooney.com. Mike at MikeMooney.com. And if you want to go to my website and check out more there, you can go to www.mikemooney.com.
I love it. Keeping it simple.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. But
Keep it
thank you. I
simple. Keep it
appreciate that.
simple. Smart person.
That's right. That's right.
And to all those out there, we will be putting that information in the show notes as well. So if you didn't capture it as you're listening right now, look for it in the show notes. And then, Mike, you also, your book that you've written, say again the title of the book, how people can get a hold of the book.
Of course. So the book is called Reputation Shift. And you can buy that at Amazon. You can buy that at my website as well. If you go through the website, I personally sign it for people. Also, you can get it on audiobook as well. So a lot of different ways that you can get it, and it's really, it's a roadmap or a toolbox for people that are really interested in building, protecting, and strengthening one of their greatest assets, and that's their reputation, but doing it in a proactive way. I outline strategies from my experience and stories in racing that help bring it to life.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank
So,
you.
Mike, as we're wrapping up, what additional, I say additional because you've shared lots of words of wisdom. So, what additional words of wisdom do you want to leave for my audience of executive business leaders?
I would share this. We are living and working and operating in a world and at a time where there's no playbook. And a lot of leaders that I've been speaking with and working with are facing anxiousness, not just themselves, but their teams. And in order to keep driving the business forward, it takes a leader to have the confidence to stay that course, or try something that may be new because the environment is moving them to a place where they have to adapt their business practices. So I'm very big on visual anchors, Dr. Karen. I think you'd appreciate that. And I have index cards on all over my desk. One of them that I would share with your viewers that I think really drives this point home is a simple 4 words that I've used from day one when I've been out here doing my work. Intentional action drives clarity. Intentional action drives clarity. What I mean by that is we may not know what step 5, 6, and 7 are, and this has been my experience, but I do know that if I take step 1 and go to step 2, that suddenly the people, the resources, the ideas, the answers start to show up that get me to step 4, 5, 6, that bring this vision to life. So I would just encourage your fans, your community, stay true to the vision, but don't keep yourself held back by thinking you've got to have all the steps right away. Take that first step intentionally.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you so much, Mike, for being here and sharing all these pearls of wisdom. I really
Thank you.
appreciate everything that you shared with the audience. And so, to the Voice of Leadership audience and Dr. Karen Speaks Leadership audience, I want to just summarize a couple of things. There's so much in here. You're going to have to go back and listen to it again yourself to do your own summary, but I'll share just a few points that Mike has shared with us today. One aspect about this is that he said there is no playbook. So we're writing the playbook every day for what's next. And when you take that next step, that first action, it's been my experience that the light shines on the step that comes after that. Now, if you don't take the first step, you won't see any other steps. So that's a tough place to be. So I'm really glad that Mike shared that with us because that's pretty powerful. He also talked about the fact that each of us has our divine natural abilities, the DNA. Love that. Make sure you're operating in the zone of your genius, your excellence, your strength that you're bringing to the table. And when we're talking about partnerships out there with organizations, we're talking about finding that trifecta of success. What's going to be the win-win-win for all the different stakeholders who are part of the process? And I love this whole notion with Tylenol in the race world of making pain go fast. So there are ways that we can partner with others to have outcomes that are beyond what we would have otherwise thought about. And I also really want to highlight that Mike said you can learn some things from your background. Take time to look back and see what did you learn back in the day. He learned to observe and to anticipate, which helps him to think with his clients about what's coming down the road next. How can they do better scenario planning? How can they be proactive and think about things that you might not think about on your own? Now, that's just a subset of what Mike said. So much wisdom in today's episode. So I hope that you're taking something, a kernel of wisdom away for yourself. And as we close out today's episode, I want to share a reading. This is about racing, but it's not about car racing, but it's about racing anyway. And no matter what kind of race you're going to be in, you've got to be prepared. You got to do some preparation. You've got to have some discipline. So this is a reading from 1 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, verses 24 and 25. And it says, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize. Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now, they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we do it for an imperishable crown. So, as you run your race out there today, think for the long haul, the long game, not just for today. Think about the imperishable, the long lasting, living leadership legacy results that you are leaving behind for others, not just for yourself. And join us again when we do part 2 of this interview with Mike Mooney. See you next time. Hi, this is Dr. Karen here today, and I want to share some important insights with you about Spirit Wings Kids Foundation, a 501c3 organization that's doing wonders across the globe and especially in Uganda. And today I have with me Donna Johnson, who's the founder of Spirit Wings Kids and a member of the board. And today she's going to tell us about the permaculture farm that they have started. Donna, tell us all about it.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. For decades, we've been supporting the Orphanage and Family Network in Uganda. And in 2018, my son is a permaculturist, and we had acres that we dedicated to his planting. And it was just amazing. And he also taught them how to do permaculture. And it's flourishing. In fact, during the pandemic, it saved lives. 203 families were fed during the pandemic. And so it's such a miracle that God just called us to plant that garden at the time that we did.
Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you so much for your work in Uganda. And a couple of other things I want people to know. As a permaculture farm is self-contained in many ways, depending on how they're growing the crops. You don't have to use pest control. You don't need fertilizer. It's a very sustainable way to provide food for the community. And so that's a blessing. So if you want to be a part of this wonderful work out there, 100% of all of your donation goes to the people in Uganda to help feed them and their families. So go to swkids.foundation and give today. Make a difference in the world. And thank you for doing so. Hi, this is Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, President and CEO of TRANSLEADERSHIP Incorporated. Did you know that workplaces can make a significant difference in the lives of people, and that you can create a positive culture that gets positive business results and also produces positive life experiences for your employees and your clients and customers? You can make a significant contribution to the world by creating the kind of culture where your people can bring their gifts to provide the most relevant and excellent products and services to your marketplace. What the research shows is that companies with excellent leadership are also more profitable. So as you flourish and as you grow in the world, you can do more for yourself as well as for others. So if this is resonating with you and you want to create a positive, profitable, and powerful corporate culture, and you care about succession, leaving the organization in a better position than when you found it, do keep in mind that that kind of legacy is something that's intentional. And I am happy to partner with you to take your organization to the next level and create that positive leadership culture. So reach me at Dr. Karen, Karen, at transleadership.com. Thank you for listening to The Voice of Leadership with me, Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. I am also your concierge executive leadership advisor for when you need to make tough business decisions, lead change, create a positive and profitable company culture, develop an enterprise-focused executive team, or prepare for leadership transition and succession. Contact me at Dr. Karen, Karen, at transleadership.com. Also go to my website, www.transleadership.com, for more leadership resources. I want to give special thanks to Ron McMillan, gospel jazz saxophonist, National Billboard recording artist, also known as Mr. Sirius XM, for allowing us to use his gifted music on our show, and to Chad Barr of the Chad Barr Group for serving as our show producer. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.